Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Today, health and nutrition first, but then the rest of the remaining program is going to be devoted to challenging the efforts of corporate America that controls the corporate media and also some of the liberal media that are all pro-vaccine. That's fine. Be pro-vaccine, but at least have science on your side. You don't, we do. Today, we're going to show you just how fraudulent, how many lies, how pathological is the behavior of those who claim that we should censor people who talk about challenging vaccine safety and efficacy. Mark Zuckerberg is now going to be censoring anything dealing with vaccines if it's not pro-vaccine. So we have a letter to Mark Zuckerberg today. I'll read it from the chairman and chief executive officer of Facebook, which is Mark Zuckerberg. You should know the truth, and clearly you don't. So if this audience thinks that power and belonging to these elite little groups like Davos, where a bunch of sociopaths get together and talk about how much money they have and how they're so brilliant and bright that they should guide us into the future when all they've done is steal from us and cause plunder and wars. Well, I have a commentary I've written for them. So that's our show today, and plus I have on several individuals who are in the battle right now. Dr. Bob Sears, a board-certified pediatrician practicing in Orange County, California. And he is here, and he's going to give us his take on mandatory vaccines. And also, is it true that it was the vaccines that ended the scourge of smallpox and measles and polio? He'll explain. He will be joined also by Jack Hennessy. Representative Jack Hennessy represents the 127th District, covering northern Bridgeport in the Connecticut General Assembly, and serves as the State House Deputy Speaker. He will be here, and I'll be asking him questions about what is the science to justify making it mandatory in states that you get your vaccines. Needless to say, I will not be giving him any softball questions, and I'll expect straight answers. Also, Kevin Berry. Kevin is a former federal attorney in civil law at the U.S. Attorney's Southern District of New York's office, and he will be here. And I'll be asking Kevin about the fraud of the CDC being nothing more than a fully captured agency in the hands of the pharmaceutical industry. And what does it mean when ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, about 200 to 250 more or less corporations, meet in secret with state legislators and get them to pass bills that benefit them, not us. That is our show, and of course we always begin by sharing insights on the latest on health and healing. The first article of today is from the University of Malaga, which is in Spain, published in the Journal of Photochemistry and Photobiology. And it's about folate. Now, folate, F-O-L-A-T-E, is the biological form of folic acid. When you take folic acid, it's converted into folate. And now they're saying that we need more of it during the summer months. Okay, we're not getting enough as it is. It's part of the B complex, and most Americans don't get enough B complex. And here's why. Higher amounts of the ultraviolet light exposure increase the need for more folate. And folate is essential, just so you know, for cell division and growth. And low levels of folate may cause megaloblastic anemia and neurotube defects and cardiovascular disease, among other conditions. So it's important that you have, I'm going to say, 500 micrograms to 1 milligram of methylated folate each day. For those of you eating your broccoli, good for you. University of Illinois has a study showing that as much as it benefits us, it really helps battle liver cancer. And this was published in the Journal of Nutrition. So it's not the only cruciferous vegetable that has the power to protect against liver cancer, but it's certainly one of the most important. And we also have an epidemic right now of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now that leads to cirrhosis of the liver and then to liver cancer. And the more overweight you are, you have as much as a 500 times higher likelihood of developing liver cancer. And although it has already been established that the brassica vegetables like broccoli and kale and onions can protect against some types of cancer, the University of Illinois wanted to know if it could help liver cancer specifically. So they studied it and found that, yes, it can. So that's good. And past studies have shown that the sulforaphane, that's one of the active ingredients in broccoli, can target and kill breast cancer stem cells, in addition to preventing new malignancies from growing. That's really significant, because when you consider the chemotherapy cannot stop cancer stem cells, which is why some people experience reoccurrences or cancer spreading after treatment. And although that study used concentrations that were higher than people would typically get from consuming broccoli, it shows that broccoli extract has the potential to impact cancer. And that's why if someone has cancer, I suggest they take powdered broccoli or they juice broccoli, because then they're getting a much higher concentrate of the brassica and the nutrients of sulforaphane that helps fight cancer. From Columbia University, could the omega-3 fatty acids help prevent miscarriages? We have an epidemic of miscarriages in the United States. In fact, approximately 1 in 10 U.S. infants are born before term, and between 10 to 30% of preterms have to be attributed to uterine infections with the type of bacteria commonly found in the mouth. And this research identifies a potential prophylactic treatment for pregnant women to lower the risk of adverse outcomes, including stillbirth. And so this type of bacteria is ubiquitous. Everybody has it in their mouths. The problems start when it travels to other parts of the body. And in pregnant women, the placenta is at particular risk for infection with this particular type of bacteria. And hormonal changes during pregnancy can cause inflammation and bleeding in the gums, which affects about 30 and up to 100% of all pregnant women. And bleeding gums creates an entryway for bacteria to leak into the bloodstream, and once in the bloodstream, the bacteria can migrate to the placenta and cause inflammation there, sometimes triggering miscarriage or stillbirth. So what this found was that the omega-3 fatty acids, widely used to reduce inflammation in chronic inflammatory disease like heart disease, diabetes, and rheumatoid arthritis, and these supplements are already recommended for pregnant women to support fetal development, but also they're shown now to also help build up and prevent intrauterine bacterial infection, and hence the miscarriages or stillbirths. Also from the University of California at San Diego, a new study that consuming turmeric, Turmeric, for just 2 months can increase your good gut bacteria. Now we know that the gut health isn't just important for digestive health, it also benefits other systems, including your nervous system and your immune system. This means that having a healthy gut is important in keeping both the mind and body in shape. And the key is to having a healthy gut bacteria is to keep a balance and diverse array of bacteria living in the digestive system. And what has been shown is that turmeric is a great promoter of this. And this was published in the Journal of Evidence-Based Integrative Medicine. So they're not absolutely certain how it works, but the team of researchers found that those who got the turmeric and curcumin had really healthy gut bacteria. So that's the deal Take your turmeric and have healthier bacteria. And protect your heart could ward off cancer. Now this is interesting. This is from Carolina Hospital System. And the United States, approximately 1 in every 4 deaths occur each year from heart disease. And most of those are preventable. And according to the American Institute for Cancer Research, approximately 50% of the most common cancers in the United States are preventable. I believe that they're off by 90%. About 95% of all cancers can be prevented. Now, cancer is the second most common cause of death in the United States after heart disease, and that includes stroke as part of heart disease. And cancer and cardiovascular disease are also intricately linked. Fortunately, the close relationship between the disease, heart disease, and cancer means preventative steps can prevent both of them. There's good reason for people at risk of heart disease and those diagnosed with cancer to start on a healthy plant-based diet. And one connection this study found between cancer and heart disease is chronic inflammation. I've talked about this countless times, which is a marker of heart disease and is known to play a role in the development of cancers like colon cancer. So the relationship between inflammation and cancer has been known since 1863, when Virchow hypothesized chronic inflammation was the origin of cancer. We now know inflammation creates an environment rich in growth factors and DNA damage promoting agents known to promote cancer. Likewise, cancer treatments can make those with cancer susceptible to heart disease. For example, radiation-based cancer treatments can gradually weaken the arterial wall and increase blood pressure. It's just one of the side effects of radiation therapy. And it's not just radiation treatment. Certain chemotherapy medications can damage the heart through varying methods. So prevention is the key. There was a Dr. Kellogg. He was a part of a sibling group, and they founded, his brother and he founded the Kellogg's cereal company in Battle Creek, Michigan. The doctor set up a sanitarium, and at that time he was looking at a disease as a state of imbalance and also inflammation. So he had people doing things that today we assume are smart, juicing every day. They had hydraulic presses. They had pressed beets and onions and carrots and garlic and get juice. He had people drinking probiotics like sauerkraut juice and exercising and doing stress reduction. I mean, when you look back at this remarkable human being, he was eccentric, but he was way ahead of his time. So just remember, a lot of you are getting a lot of radiation through CAT scans and mammographies, and we're not told the truth of how bad they are. They're bad both for heart disease and cancer. So get on a healthy plant-based diet, exercise, deal with stress, take appropriate supplements, and you've helped both cancer and heart disease. From the University of East Finland comes a study about plant proteins found to help prevent type 2 diabetes. A diet rich in plant protein can help reduce the risk of developing diabetes. That's a recent study. And the findings demonstrate that protein sources play a role in the onset of the disease. And this was done at the University of East Finland and published in the Ischemic Heart Disease Risk Factor Study. So, have your vegetables, have your grains. The study was also published in the British Journal of Nutrition. And you can help prevent diabetes. And this was a long-term study involving 200,000 participants. Also, University of Gothenburg, which is in Germany, a study finds children who eat well are happier, have better self-esteem, are less likely to get bullied than their peers. So healthy food consumption is highly associated with good health, and this has been validated by various scientific literature. And adding fruits and vegetables to our meals results in healthier bodies and a means to prevent disease. And eating all the junk food that young people eat and fast foods causes obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and mood swings. A study published in the British Medical Journal of Public Health found that food doesn't just manipulate health, it is also a factor in psychological well-being and vice versa. So those who eat healthy tend to be happier as kids. And also, for those of you who have scalp psoriasis, Azad University in Iran found that turmeric tonic, and this was a cooperative study performed by researchers at the clinical pharmacy department at Azad University, and the Skin and Stem Cell Research Center, and also in Dallas at the Cancer Dermatology Center, they found that turmeric, T-U-R-M-E-R-I-C, turmeric, the golden orange spice known worldwide for powerful anti-inflammatory properties, was found to be an effective treatment for psoriasis, which, as we all know, is a chronic inflammatory skin condition that has no known cure. And this was a randomized placebo-controlled trial published in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology. So now we know how to help people instead of buying the drug that you see advertised all the time on television. And to the doctor who I counseled yesterday, hopefully you're listening, you said you would. This is important. This is from Tel Aviv University in Israel. Mental and physical exercise found to be beneficial for neurodegenerative diseases, even in late stages of illness. Almost everyone knows what it feels like to trip and fall. Falling is painful and damaging, especially to individuals living with Parkinson's. So medical experts suggest motor rehabilitation, but this has been pretty ineffective. Fortunately, a new study from Tel Aviv University sheds light on how physical therapy combined with virtual reality lowers the incidence of falling among Parkinson's patients. And this was done at the Shackler School of Medicine and Tel Aviv Medical Center. And they found that training on brain activation in Parkinson's disease made a big difference. So it's just something for those of you who know someone with Parkinson's. This study, we posted the study at prn.fm. I'm Gary Null. We're going to take a break and come right back. We're going to go to our guest early in today's program because we have so much to share, so please stay with us.
Though you may not drive a great big Cadillac.
I'd like to welcome all of you. As you know, Facebook is going to be censoring all articles, no matter who the author, no matter what the proof. If you support that vaccines shouldn't be mandatory, if you have anything negative to say, the pro-establishment Mark Zuckerberg is going to censor those. This is a letter to Zuckerberg, and I thought you would find it of interest. And as my guests get on, they can listen in. It'll take me about 5 to 6 minutes to read this, but it's important, and we posted the letter. This is from yesterday. To Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, Menlo Park, California. Dear Mr. Zuckerberg, with reports this mid-February that Facebook is considering censoring so-called anti-vax posts, I'm writing to convince you that the people doing these posts are mislabeling purposely and that their messages are being misrepresented. In fact, these people should not be labeled at all. They are simply American citizens. The population of Americans who have concerns over vaccines have a legitimate comment. And they, like all Americans, have constitutional rights under the First Amendment and elsewhere to communicate with each other. Moreover, they have a civic duty to participate in their own government, and Facebook provides a public forum both for communication and for virtual assembly. Finally, they in fact have the right under the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations to refuse to participate in clinical studies on vaccine safety. The pressure upon you to silence those reporting issues with vaccines is the latest attempt of individuals who have been short-circuiting U.S. congressional mandates to make vaccines safer. But an additional non-pejorative labels are useful. The correct terms for the population in question are ex-vaxxers, the vaccine risk aware, the vaccine injured, and yes, some are outright self-identified anti-vaxxers. Almost all have been human subjects in vaccine safety studies without being properly consented. As a lifetime scientist who has devoted my life to the reduction of pain and suffering, I would not be truly informed on the realities of vaccine risk had I not decided to write a chapter on vaccines as biomedical success story in one of my books. I will provide you with specific verifiable facts and their accompanying references to help you in your decision-making on whether Facebook posts by members of the vaccine risk community are in fact anti-science. I propose that regulatory agencies have been captured and that a dangerous form of corporatism has become entrenched in the U.S. government and poses a serious risk to some families. Fact 1. The pharmaceutical industry has captured the CDC, the FDA, and Congress. Dr. Julie Gerberding, former CDC director, was hired by Merck after keeping Dr. William Thompson silent on concerns over how his colleagues at CDC were handling findings of positive associations between on-time MMR vaccines and autism. The CDC Foundation receives donations from over 200 corporations, many of which are vaccine manufacturers. In 2017, they reported over $470 million in income from donors. Fact 2. The CDC is a de facto for-profit government arm of the pharmaceutical companies and represents modern-day corporatism. The CDC itself has financial conflicts in that they own patents on vaccines. Nearly all members of the ACIP, the committee that makes recommendations to the CDC on pediatric vaccine schedule, have direct financial conflicts of interest with vaccine manufacturers. While not allowed, no enforcement of the rules disallowing the information is evident given its membership. The ACIP has deliberated vaccine safety after voting to approve vaccines, as if it is an afterthought. In our view, the ACIP should be disbanded and vaccine safety science conducted by organizations without ties to those who profit from vaccine sales. The CDC employs unofficial vaccine educators to bully, harass, and intimidate individuals who criticize their commercial products. Some of these organizations also lobby using funds from a federal organization, violating laws restricting lobbying. After being invited by CDC to submit public comment in speaking out against weakening warning to patients and vaccine information statements, I was personally censored by the CDC, which was reversed after a letter from my lawyer. The public comments from some 75 other vaccine risk-aware Americans were also released as a result of my notifying the CDC of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Fact 3. The FDA has failed in its duties to hold the pharmaceutical companies accountable for vaccine safety, reflecting further the massive regulatory vacuum around vaccine safety. The FDA missed the Merck allegedly spiked human samples with rabbit antibodies to increase the apparent efficacy of the MMR vaccine against the mumps virus. The FDA missed the fact that Merck doubled the amount of aluminum used in the human papilloma vaccine just before it went to market, a fact revealed by research by 3 mothers of vaccine-injured children. The only part of vaccines for which safety testing is required is the protein component, and that is not done well. vaccines are not yet screened for proteins that match human proteins, as required by FDA regulations, setting the stage for autoimmunity. Aluminum is used as an adjuvant in vaccines, but unlike new adjuvants under study by the FDA, has never once undergone dose escalation studies in infant mice. Aluminum dosing in vaccines is not based upon body weight, and dosage safety was determined by FDA using an analogy from dietary forms of aluminum given to adult animals, not injected doses given to infants. Number 4, vaccines are insufficiently studied for safety, and widespread scientific fraud has been used to bias both the results of studies and the public's perspectives on the full scope of vaccine safety science. Objective appraisal of the studies used to show that thimerosal is safe and that vaccines do not cause autism, in fact, shows that the studies are weak, underpowered, biased, lack an appropriate control group, or potentially fraudulent. Fact 5. The vaccine risk-aware are more informed than pediatricians on the realities of vaccine risks. Testimony in custody trial in Michigan by Dr. Theresa Holtrup, director of the Michigan chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, included statements in which she offered that she was not an expert in vaccines. After the judge qualified her as an expert in vaccines, vaccines are worldwide projected to be a $30 billion year industry this year. In contrast, millions of American parents have studied vaccine safety from a perspective unbiased by profit motive. Fact 6. The U.S. Health and Human Services and vaccine manufacturers have abdicated their charter given by Congress in 1986. A. Make vaccines safer, and B. Find ways to identify individuals and families who are at increased risk due to vaccination. The 1986 law that made vaccines liability-free also mandated the above steps to increase vaccine safety. Required meetings have not been held, and mandated progress reports have not been made to Congress. It's only 33 years late. Human subjects who are injured during post-market vaccine safety trials must sue the U.S. Health and Human Services for damage. Vaccine manufacturers and those who administer vaccines share no liability. And since 1986, the U.S. Health and Human Services, the defendant in vaccine injury cases, has paid out $4 billion in settlement and damages to persons and families impacted by vaccine injury. Those who claim that vaccine caused no harm then also try to claim that the rulings of the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, the special masters, come with no findings of causality. Most vaccine injury Americans and their families are not informed, as required by law, of the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program by their doctors. And this National Vaccine Program employs work in a program administered and answered to the policies of the defendant. For example, the defendant, the U.S. Public Health Service, controls which vaccine injuries are awarded in a table of vaccine injuries. In no other area of law does a defendant control which charges can be leveled against them. Fact 8. The actual risk-benefit ratio of most vaccines is unknown and is unknowable given the current paradigm of inappropriately designed short-term vaccine safety trials and the use of passively collected information on vaccine injury in a process labeled pharmacognition. Harvard Pilgrim discovered that only 1% of vaccine adverse effects were captured by the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which means 99% were not. In 2018, Health and Human Services stipulated that they failed to report, as required by the 1986 Act, to report to Congress on their progress in making vaccines safer and progress towards identifying susceptible subgroups, and only one vaccine has been safety tested using a scientifically valid placebo saline. The remainder were all studied using either aluminum adjuvant or one or more other vaccines. And finally, those who profit from vaccine sales are engaged in a misinformation campaign that short-circuits any possible utility of post-market research on vaccines. The CDC teaches pediatricians and other vaccine proponents to exaggerate the seriousness of vaccine-targeted infections while also exaggerating the benefits of vaccinations. Most of the reduction in mortality and morbidity in pediatric infections targeted by vaccines occurred prior to the introduction of a whole population vaccine. Those same organizations and corporations are engaged in a systematic political campaign to strip American citizens of their self-given rights to personal exemptions and religious exemptions to vaccination. Once those rights are stripped, the corporatist cabal will and already has moved to wrongfully and egregiously persecute medical doctors who stand by their Hippocratic oath to first do no harm and provide medical exemptions to families who have already witnessed vaccine injury firsthand. California State Senator Richard Pan lied to his colleagues on whether aborted fetal cells were used in production of vaccines. Australia has persecuted Dr. John Picey for honoring patients' requests for medical exemptions. Similarly, Dr. Bob Sears, who we'll hear in a moment, of California, is on probation for honoring families' requests for medical exemptions. In Oregon, Dr. Paul Thomas is being harassed with ethics accusations, and that is just a separate issue. So Facebook is a product of a free and open society, and at this time is a beacon of light in an increasingly dark and dangerous era in which large corporations abuse their massive resources to keep an unwitting public uninformed. The Code of Federal Regulation guarantees the right of all Americans to refuse to participate in medical experiments. Since vaccines are, by definition, under constant study for safety, citizens have the right to invoke these regulations in their refusal to subject their children to unwanted intrusion by a for-profit medical community with their liability-free vaccines. Please see the National Research Act, Title II, Public Law 93-348, Regulations for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research, 45 CFR 46, and revisions of various regulation rules and laws. And that was from Dr. James Lynn Weiler, W-E-I-L-E-R, to him. What impact it will have, we will see in short order. Now let's go over to our guests who are standing by, and we have Dr. Bob Sears, who's on right now. Nice to have you with us today.
Yes, hi, Gary. I appreciate you having me on.
Since many people in the audience may not know your story, I gave your background a little earlier. Years ago, no family gave much concern if a child came down with measles. It was a normal childhood illness that was more of a nuisance than a reason for serious alarm. Now, and somewhat magically, measles has turned into a life-threatening infectious disease, and if we listen to the medical establishment or the talking heads on television, or even Amy Goodman and the media talking as one, and this has gone on for the past several weeks of hyperinflated measles mania, you would think it were an Ebola invasion or worse. And of course, all of this over-exaggeration is only one goal towards that end, and that is to spread fear into the public, increase vaccination compliance, and further marginalize and criminalize parents who opt against vaccinating their children. So please begin by explaining why this measles scare is being overhyped based upon the actual facts of the severity of the measles infection. The floor is yours.
Right. Well, thanks, Gary. Well, we know there are so many serious possible reactions to the MMR vaccine that is supposed to protect us against measles, that more and more of the public has lost confidence in the safety of this vaccine, and is probably one of the most common vaccines that educated parents opt out of. And so what is the pharmaceutical industry to do? I mean, they really only have one tactic that they can use, and that's to make this vaccine mandatory. And everybody knows that pharmaceutical companies donate a lot of money to legislators, and so legislators are basically taking this opportunity with the media spreading all this, hype and fear about measles, they're taking this opportunity to make the measles vaccine mandatory in states, all over the country. And I think intelligent Americans will see through it. They'll see it, for the lies that it is. They'll see it for the fake news that it is. And truly, the scientific realities about measles, the facts are undisputable. Basically, measles is a routine, benign childhood illness for almost everyone who catches it. 99.9% of people who catch it will not be harmed. The very rare fatalities that we see are in about 1 in 10,000 cases of measles in the United States. And that's really when someone is very malnourished or they're very deficient in vitamin A. And those are problems we can solve. We've solved those in the United States. All we have to do is make sure you are well-fed, well-nourished, and healthy, and you get plenty of vitamin A foods. And then if you come across measles, it's going to be the harmless disease that it's supposed to be. But you know what? That doesn't sell vaccines, Gary, and that doesn't pass laws. If you're going to mandate medicine against the American public, there has to be a scary emergency. There has to be a huge health threat. And so they have to paint measles in a false light as this terrible disease. Otherwise, they're not going to get these laws passed. And what I'm hoping is the American public will see this stunt for what it is. It's a political, pharmaceutically funded stunt. And I fear that we are going to lose some states. Some states, are going to pass these mandatory laws this year. It's going to be unfortunate. But then again, that's just going to make all of us rise up even more to fight these draconian laws. And so that's kind of what I do. I basically educate people about the truth about vaccines and infectious diseases, and I share objective data. And that's why, anyone who investigates vaccines sees their legitimate concerns. And that's why the people who opt out of vaccines, or even who opt out of one vaccine, like the MMR vaccine for measles, they tend to be the higher educated families. The more people investigate this, through CDC data and objective research, they see the problems and they're opting out, and pharma doesn't like that. So that's kind of where we're at, Gary, and I think it's kind of up to us to educate the public on this.
I'd like to share just a little perspective with you and get your feedback. I have written, as you know, 52 articles with Richard Gale and produced 4 multi-award-winning documentaries on the subject of vaccines. The people who've come to the premieres, the people who've attended the lectures, are only people who've been vaccine injured. At this moment in American history, based upon a completely fractured society and the dearth of people who are not looking for the truth, even in people who are highly educated, including medical doctors themselves, they're not looking for the truth. You're an exception. Look, there are 900,000 doctors. How many are using complementary alternative medicine that has been proven by the government's own database, the Library of Medicine, to work? They're stuck in paradigms. They also, remember, doctors, engineers, lawyers, judges, Supreme Court judges, everyone's equally susceptible to being conditioned. And so if we've been conditioned that vaccines are safe and effective, and all the federal agencies say it's so, and now the states, behind the scenes, I'm going to talk with one of the legislators in a moment about the power of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, is propagandizing people it's safe and make it mandatory. Then the people who are only going to come to hear you or anyone else, Sherry Tenpenny and Dr. Tony Bart, are people already damaged and saying, how could this have happened? Well, because did you listen before your child was diagnosed as autism? We had a medical doctor woman on last week, an Orthodox woman from the Midwest. She had her daughter die because of vaccines. Now she's very educated. The trouble is right now in America, can you name me a single issue out of 100 issues, one single issue, whether it's global warming, whether it's the Citizens United and reversing it, the Glass-Steagall Act reversing it, whether it's taking all the money out of campaigns so we don't have oligarchs controlling it. Can you show me one single issue that's important to us where the public has been informed, chooses to be intentionally aware and then acts proactively to reverse a bad situation or prevent it from getting worse. I don't know of a single one. I believe that we are a nation of hubris at this moment, or indifference, and we're looking to something else other than what's important in our daily lives. So I don't see anything coming from the vaccine movement. If we had 100 million people whose children were vaccinated and then became injured, Congress would be just as corrupt as it's ever been. The media would be just as vile as they've always been. And we'd have a campaign out there saying we believe her, but we don't happen to believe you if you're a woman whose child was vaccinated and injured. We're one really dysfunctional nation at this point. That's my point of view. I'd like your comments.
Right. I agree with you on the political level and, sort of the big, institution of medicine, Gary. But you know what? On a grassroots level, more and more young families are doing their homework. And that's what Big Pharma fears the most. Virtually every single family that investigates 3 or 4 or 5 scientific articles about vaccines, they start to see the problems. And honestly, pharma is scared. And their only alternative is to make vaccines mandatory so that it's no longer a choice. And I almost feel like they've gone too far and they're overstepping that line, and that's more and more states make these mandatory, more and more people are going to turn away from them. And so, again, we can only do so much. That's basically why I spend all my time simply providing objective, neutral scientific information to families who look for it and want to be educated, and that's what we all do.
Bob, you're doing a great job, and I support you. That's why you were invited on this show. But look at the irony of it. You're trying to educate the public and your peers, and you're the one having your license to practice medicine in the state of California taken away. Do you see any irony in that?
Right. It is ironic, and it hasn't happened yet, of course. I have my license, and I'm practicing fully. But it's a scary time, and I think those facts need to wake up the American public. They are trying to shut down.
So, Bob, one last comment on this.
Yeah.
When we go back to Vietnam and we go to the memorial and we see 58,000 people who died for nothing, and we see 3.5 million people over there who died for nothing, and we would have learned, right? We didn't. And then Afghanistan and Syria and Libya, we've never learned from any of our background, including 900,000 physicians. Either A, they're intentionally negligent, which shame on them, because they should be at the forefront of wanting to know things that could displace what they have if what they have in their paradigm is not working. But that's not where they're at. And that's why I asked the audience to hold the certainty of medical paradigms in strict judgment. Make them prove that what they're about to do to you is necessary. And also, why can't the media, why can't the people at any of the networks, including alternative, including KPFA, I won't even mention their name ever again, that's how low opinion I think of this San Francisco-based station, they won't allow honest, open debate. Why don't they allow those of us who spent 15,000 hours and have the facts? Because no longer, and this is the hard thing to learn to, Bob, no longer should anything about vaccine be based upon the facts, because that battle's been fought and won 1,000 times over. So if you continue to engage in showing that what Illumina adjuvant is to the body and the immune system and how the antibodies are not really protective, they can't prove that, then you're fighting their fight. And that's what everyone in this damn battle is doing. They're fighting the opposition's fight, and they're going to lose. You're all going to lose. That's the bottom line. You can't fight their fight. It's about politics and profit, and that's where the battle has to be waged, and nothing is being done to bring that battle to the public's attention. Final thoughts.
Right, I agree. Yeah, that is an important battle. I'm glad that people like you are fighting that battle, and some of your other guests are fighting that battle. For me, I'm just going to keep telling the truth, and the American public, can investigate it on their own, and those who really look for the truth will find it.
Okay, well, that's being very that's being very optimistic, man. You're giving the American public credit for I will never do that, because they haven't showed that they are capable of doing it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong when
we'll see,
7 7 million Americans lost their homes, which was about 21 to 22 million Americans, and people who lived across the street from each other for decades, who went to the same school, who barbecued in the summer together, went over and says, neighbor, I hear you're being foreclosed on. Is there anything I can do to help you? Not one happened. People looked out the window and then turned their eyes away. Just remember that, of who they came for when we chose not to pay attention, and then one day they come for us. And Bob, they're knocking on your door today. We'll be there to help you, though. That I can promise you. And I will not be talking about science. I refuse to do another documentary, write another article on the science of vaccines and its illegitimacy, because we've proven that. We've got to go to the people making the money, the corruption in their background, the dirty deals in Washington, expose the politicians how much money they took, including the ones out in California. And that's where the next battle has to be. It has to be tough
I look forward
smart.
to hearing. I look forward to hearing from the legislator that you have on today, because you're right. That's where the battle also needs to be fought.
He's next up right now. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Gary.
being on.
Right.
Now we go over to Representative Hennessy, and I gave your background a little earlier. Nice to have you on today.
Hey, how you doing, Ned? Pleasure to be on your show.
Don't say that till after the interview. So you may change your mind. Right now, there are laws.
My wife is a great fan of yours, and she's been.
Don't hold that against me. Right now, there are laws.
We just celebrated our 39th wedding anniversary, so we've.
Good for you.
We've done it.
Right now, we are facing laws in every state. This was an orchestrated campaign by Big Pharma, and they're appearing in states to remove religious and philosophical vaccine exemptions. So provide the best argument for preserving these exemption rights.
Well, the government has no right to dictate a parent's right to raise their children and to make the salient decisions affecting their health and well-being. It's my belief that our children are our most important contribution to society, no matter what we do with our lives. And to have government intrude and to say that, we don't know what we're talking about and that they need to be vaccinated, that is a violation. The government needs to stop at our children's skin.
Okay, fair enough. Basically, if we refer to the Nuremberg Code, vaccination is still an experimentation. And since no vaccine is 100% safe or effective for any given individual, we must acknowledge vaccination remains in an experimental phase. Therefore, mandating these drugs, and vaccines are drugs that fall under the same categorization as drugs, Class A, B, and C, and so, based upon as safety studies performed, should be criminalized, not mandated. For example, I think almost all vaccines have not been studied or evaluated on their safety to fetus, nor whether they can cause cancer. Curiously, the drug makers and the federal health agencies have managed to separate vaccines as something completely different than drugs that are all with serious side effects. Your thoughts?
Well, I brought this to one of my fellow legislators, our parliamentarian expert who lives and dies by the Constitution, and I brought to him that we're being bamboozled by a pharmaceutical industry, and I don't have the votes, but I need to protect First Amendment rights. Can you help me? And his answer was an emphatic no, because he saw his job as providing ease of conduct of business and that the majority rules. Another point I'd like to make is a doctor friend of mine, I presented this argument to him, and his response was, this is like asking the Pope, does he believe in Catholicism? So these two, rebuttals of the fact that children are being injured just kind of coalesces, the idea that they're not looking at the facts, but, that the facts are an inconvenient truth. Unfortunately, legislators don't read the science. They rely on experts to formulate their opinion. And, in that sense, the debate is over. These bills that are before the legislature have been in the works since last year, they've been working to get these passed in a manner that I'm concerned about, in the idea that a rather non-controversial bill comes to the floor and it gets stripped, a strike-all amendment, and then we lose our religious freedom, that it just goes in 2 seconds. It's very possible that's going to happen. And so, I'm trying to get my fellow legislators to, understand that this is a fundamental right that across the country is being assailed by an industry that's seeking profits and not really concerned about our children's welfare.
I absolutely agree with you on that. Thank you. Hold on. Let's go to Kevin Barry. Kevin, nice to have you with us today.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for touching this subject, as you always have, and very brave man.
Earlier, when Gardasil was being launched, it was revealed that front groups such as, let's say, the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, were behind the effort, notably in the state of Texas. What other front groups do you know are involved in the vaccine scare underway and behind these vaccine mandate bills appearing in the state legislators?
There's a lot of them, Gary. Two of the worst are NACHO, an acronym, NAACHO, and SACHO. It's the National Association of county and city health officials, and the other, SACHO, is the state level. So it's a machine style funding where the HHS funds all of those county legislators, county health organizations, to go to legislators or to go to congresspeople in D.C. to make sure HHS gets the budget. Then they testify at hearings, and the cycle continues. Right? They're funded by HHS. They go to legislators to get HHS funding, and everyone just participates in the revenue stream. So it's a big mess. And I just wanted to say how nice it is to hear Jack Hennessy, who's a Democrat in Connecticut, because not to get too political, but the Republicans are generally better on this issue for a personal liberty issue, on the personal liberty grounds. And what we're going to need to knock these attempts to take away religious freedom down are some Democrats to buck their party. The party leadership wants to pass these mandates, and we're going to need some Democrats, especially in the tri-state area, in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. There's 2-to-1 Democratic majorities in the Assembly and the Senate. So if some Democrats don't vote against this, it's going to pass. And so we need more Democrats like Jack Hennessy.
I agree. Can you speak on the politics and profit motive behind these vaccine mandates?
Yeah, it's as you said in your opening, that it's about captured agencies, and those agencies are certainly captured. Pharmaceutical companies are trying to capture populations. They captured the population of California in 2015, 39 million people. They captured Italy, 60 million people, and Italy right now is fighting that mandate off. Hopefully they'll continue to fight it. They captured France, 65 million people. And right now there are bills in 9 states that are going after the exemptions, covering more than 60 million Americans. And what do those 9 states have in common? Well, here are the 9 states: New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Hawaii, and Arizona. 8 of the 9
all
of those,
blue states.
I'm sorry?
Blue states.
Yeah, did I go too fast? I'm sorry. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine.
Blue states.
Blue states, yeah, blue states. That's 8 of the 9 states that they're going after right now have Democratic Senates, Democratic Assembly, and Democratic governors, just like California had in 2015. So if these bills go on a party line vote, they're going to pass. So if there are Democratic elected officials listening today, please scratch the surface of vaccine safety, and you'll see that there are legitimate issues here. And as you said earlier, Gary, one other thing that's a passion project for me right now is getting religious leaders involved. Where are the religious leaders? This is a First Amendment. It's a First Amendment. Freedom of religion is the first thing in the Bill of Rights. It's the first thing in the First Amendment. Our founders started the Constitution, and they said, okay, what are the important things that citizens should have? And the first thing they said freedom of religion. And pharmaceutical companies are in danger of taking it away on a PR measles stunt. To me, it's very clear, but from a legislative perspective, you're giving away a First Amendment right for a measles hysteria? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But there's a groupthink that happens in legislatures that's kind of scary, right? And it's all fear-based. It's all not wanting to be labeled anti-vax. So here's an idea for the Democratic and the Republican legislative officials. Embrace freedom of religion, embrace the Bill of Rights, embrace the Constitution, and don't worry about the anti-vax label. This is not about anti-vax or pro-vax. This is about First Amendment.
I agree. One last thought here for everyone. You all may remember law professors such as Dorrit Reese at UCLA and Arthur Kaplan at New York University Law School were promoted alongside Paul Offit that parents with unvaccinated children should be charged with negligence and a danger to society under the law. They also promoted this idea that children should have vaccine rights. And now we are seeing just during the past week stories of children wanting to be vaccinated against the wishes of their anti-vax parents. And of course, if this is permitted under the law, the children will be victimized by a rapid health system in public schools to convince children with that they must be vaccinated. And of course, none of the school health officials or nurses are well educated about vaccine science. So this trend is bad. Also, once you mandate vaccines and the pipeline is open, there's over 247 new vaccines in the pipeline. Imagine if they say, well, we've got children taking 12, why not have them take 112? There's really nothing that could stop them. And the American media should have been there to guard against this, and they have been a part of it. And shame on them for that. So we will keep you all up to date anytime the three of you want a forum to share any updated progress reports. Please let us know, and we will offer our program as a forum to fight back against the tyranny that we now see happening in public health. Thank you all for being with us today.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
I'd just like to acknowledge the groundswell of emails that have been sent to the legislature from parents. These are not canned, fill-in-the-blank emails talking about the concerns that they have, but they're personal stories of people's lives interrupted by an unnecessary intervention with vaccines. We're receiving hundreds of emails across the state asking that we not remove this religious exemption. And I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people out there watching this.
I agree. And last week, Dr. Brian Hooker gave a statement to the Washington legislators that is searing, and we posted on prn.fm. We also have all 52 articles free and available, all completely vetted scientifically and for facts. And so let's just keep sharing the articles and sharing the information. There's 3.5 million children with autism. That's 7 million parents, and that's just autism. You're probably looking at least another 10 million children who are slower learners, who have some form of ADHD, some form of learning behavior that were also induced by vaccines. It's time that those people joined together and then demanded that something be done, and that's a very powerful political bloc. You have 10 million people who are going to vote against you, speak out against you, and these are not just regular people. These are people with damage in their lives, their children's lives, and they're going to raise hell about it. And we need more hell raisers in America today, not less. Thank you all for being with us today. Have a nice day, everyone.
When the night